Thank you, Deacon. Thank you, Monica, for inviting me here today. Wanted to, usually I'll do an opening prayer, but he already did it, but I wanted us to do a Hail Mary. I'd like to have Mary present with what we do here. In the Father and Son. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. My name is Dan Ongst. I'm president and founder of Road to Purity, organization that it's been around almost 8 years, and we a little over 8 years actually, and we work with chastity, pornography addiction, sex addiction, anything in that category pretty much. Today, a brief overview of what I'm going to try to cover is we'll talk about mostly pornography, defining the problem, how pornography is affecting the culture, and how it's a disordered sexuality and what's happening. A little bit about my history, my story somewhat, share some insights about what's actually wrong with pornography. Most of us kind of have a general idea, but how deep does it go? And then we're going to talk about the solution. And there's two pieces of that solution that are important. So first, as far as defining, what the problem is, pornography, as we already probably know, is a very disordered sexuality in our culture. It's one of the most destructive things that has ever been happening in mankind. It's destroying our children, our families, marriages, youth, just our identities of who we are and how we behave. Now, let me ask you guys one. I'm going to try to get you involved a little bit here. As far as an average age of first exposure, what do you think that would be? What average age that a person would start to be exposed?
6.
Okay. You guys are very, very good on that. Officially, one of the statistics is around 9 to 10. I recently saw one that I don't have the stats of, but it was 7. So that's pretty astonishing that it's right in there. One of the other stats is that a few years old, over 11 million teens view porn every single day. Over 50% of divorces will cite one person having an obsessive interest in internet pornography. That's one of the leading causes of divorce. Now, there's all kinds of studies out there. I mean, hundreds of them, and we have no idea. Oh, there we go. Okay. Turn the mic on, that helps. I'm being told in the back, so we can't hear you. Oh. Anyway, so there's all kinds of stats from 10 years old or more. And we don't know where they came from, how they were done, what the demographics were, so forth. So we wanted to come up with a good real number that we could define, that we could control. So 3 years ago, we were at a SEEK conference, which is a conference put on by Fellowship of Catholic University students. There was over 10,000 Catholic college-age students at this conference. We did a survey and got about 500 to participate in it. Our question, we had numerous questions. One of the questions we had, all anonymous, was, do you feel that you struggle with inappropriate sexual behavior? Now, we defined it as any one of pornography, masturbation, anonymous sex, or hooking up. Do you struggle with any of those? And when we got all the numbers in, 88% of the young men and 81% of the young women said yes. These are Catholic college students, not the ones that went to school and stopped going to Mass. They're at this week-long conference, going to daily Mass, going to adoration. This is the cream of the crop, if you will, of who we surveyed and the results of that. So that gives you a real idea of what's really going on out there. With that information, with all the stats we have combined, we estimate that the total visits to pornography sites every day is about 1 billion visits. Now, just to give you a little bit about me, because many of you probably don't know who I am or anything about me, why I do this work and so forth. As Deacon said, I am a recovering sex addict. I was addicted for over 30 years myself. I've been in recovery for about 15. And why I say sex addict rather than just a porn addict is my addiction went way beyond pornography. I was into massage parlors, affairs, prostitution, the whole gamut. So I was way deep inside of it. And not knowing at the time, there's probably some of the individuals I run across were trafficked victims. Looking back, I could guess that probably was true, but I had no idea at the time that any of that was going on. By the grace of God, in a rare situation, I am still married after all this. I've celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary last summer. God has his plan. She has not only been here through this, she is now supporting what I'm doing, what we're doing, and she's here today, and she's willing to talk to any women that have questions in this, who are on the other side. So how do I put up with this? How do I get through this? So she supports me on that side too. Now, we come from an education standpoint. Come at this with that way. So often people will say, they're involved in pornography, they don't have any information, which for the most part is true. I never had the sex talk, if you will, when I was a kid. And even those that don't have one that's helpful. What I want to ask you guys is, who here has had a talk with their parents when they're younger that explained the God-given gift of sexuality and what it means to co-create life with God? Has that ever been a conversation in a sex talk with you? No? You? One?
With my kids.
With your kids, but not with you, right. Today, it's sometimes as good Catholics, we grow up, we start to learn we need to do that. But when we grew up, it didn't happen. I don't even count how many people I've talked to in settings like this. I had one person once say yes. We don't know what this is about. We're talking about theology of the body for the most part is really what this is about. We don't know. People don't know. Even now, sitting out there, probably most of you don't really know the full gamut of what's really at play. As we get back into talking about pornography, one of the questions that people I talk to so many times, guys, they'll ask, is it really a sin? Is it really that bad? Now, I'll probably get the answer, from you guys, but, does anybody here think that pornography is not a sin? Okay. Right answer, or lack thereof. One of the things that I share in audiences that don't have that is what Matthew 5:28. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. The lust is the root of some of the adultery. Luca Gilkerson, who used to work at Covenant Eyes, who many of you know what that is, he's quoted as saying that porn is a digital prostitute. Not only is it a sin, but it's a mortal sin. It's a violation of the seventh commandment, which is adultery. And that's a line that a lot of guys resist to cross, don't want to believe, but pornography is adultery. That's just a plain simple fact. It violates human dignity. It proposes that women are objects and things. One of the evidences of that is that they are so dehumanized, the actresses in pornography, they're so dehumanized that suicide of porn actresses is the highest of any profession in existence. They can't live with themselves once they get into it or are coerced into it or whatever the situation is. There are many things that are a problem with it beyond a sin and so forth. I want to hear from you guys what you think that you know of is wrong with pornography. Just shout it out. I'll repeat it so we hear it recording.
Well, I think they're forced into it a lot of times in some way.
Okay, trafficking, that's true. In pornography, in and of itself, the consumption of it, or just how it's used, what is wrong with it?
Maybe a desperation to feel loved.
Okay, that's true. Desperation to feel loved. That is a part of it, yeah.
Breaks down the ability to have a relationship with your wife because you start to think that it should be like that professional on the TV that does it.
Right.
It makes it harder to connect.
Right. It destroys the relationship in basically perverting how you see your wife or other women, in believing that what you've seen in the scenes is the way you're supposed to treat women. Now, a disturbing fact of that is the majority of young people, teens, will say that pornography is an acceptable way to learn about sex. Yeah, I mean, you can see why this is going downhill real fast. Some of the other, okay, go ahead.
It stops your procreation because you're not interested in a relationship with another human being. So you don't have babies because of that.
Right. Stops procreation, which is absolutely right as well. Some of the other issues that a lot of people don't realize is pornography is highly addictive and very highly addictive. There's a whole cocktail of chemicals in the brain that's around sexuality, dopamine, oxytocin, norepinephrine, testosterone, etc. All of these, there's a cocktail that happens during sexual activity, whether it's with a person or in pornography. It's progressive being addictive. As you're involved, you want more and more. And part of that is because of the dopamine that's involved. The dopamine is something that triggers the pleasure centers of the brain, and it's something that helps us know what it is that's pleasurable and what we need, either survival or pleasurable. So it's the chemical that tells us when we're thirsty where to get water. Okay, but pornography overloads in an unnatural rate these dopamine receptors, so they begin to shut down. As they shut down, we need more intense, more risky of the same substance or visual stimulation to create the same experience. So it extends it beyond. That's why very frequently it becomes into a physical expression, like with mine, the prostitution and so forth, and I'll share with that in a minute. But there's Dr. Donald Hilton of the American Board of Neurology. He is quoted as saying that pornography is as addictive as cocaine and heroin. When you look at the studies of a dopamine spike, when you're looking at pornography versus a dopamine spike with cocaine or heroin, they're almost the same. Oxytocin, one of the chemicals that are released in sexual behavior, the scientific community nicknames it a cuddle drug. A cuddle drug. It's the drug that causes the experience that when you've completed, you want to snuggle or cuddle with someone. You want to be with someone. There's that experience of connection. It's also a dress rehearsal for prostitution, especially looking at the scenes and so forth. Because of its progressive nature, a large percentage of consumers, usually men, will go into a physical behavior, acting out physically with prostitution, massage parlors, and so forth. For mine, I'll share a little story with that. My addiction was so advanced, if you will, that there will be times where I would be searching out, on the internet, a prostitute to go see. And as a Catholic convert, I knew it was wrong. I would be traveling to go meet with that girl, and I would know 100% that if I do this and I die before I make it to confession, I would go to hell. That was clear. It wasn't an if, maybe, all, maybe I get, no, I knew this. And I would do it anyway. I was playing Russian roulette with my soul. That's how hopeless and helpless this can get. This is why it goes so far, and it's so powerful. This is where it drives the human trafficking. Things are not logical. Things are disrespectful. Things are just disgraceful to other humans, but we don't care. We need it. We got to have it. We're willing to go to hell for it. That's how bad this is. This is not just me. This is a common story. The Polaris Project, which I'm sure Monica is aware of, is another organization that deals with trafficking, and they have a hotline and so forth. They have a report a couple years ago. There are over 9,000 illicit massage parlors in the United States. These are full whorehouses. I know for a fact there are over 100 of them in Colorado Springs area. This is a supply and demand thing. This is not something that pops up and they hope they get a customer. This is something that there's a demand for it. It has progressed. Nobody wakes up, no man wakes up in the morning, has never looked at pornography and just says, oh, I think I'm going to go to a massage parlor and see if I can have sex. No, it progresses to get there. And the pornography is what leads it to it. There are also over 1 million prostitutes in the United States. Same thing, supply and demand. One of the other side effects, obviously, the whole business around it that Monica was human sex trafficking. Pornography, in many reports, is linked as the #1 fuel to sex trafficking. This Polaris Project, again, and I think it was 2022, they reported that through their hotline, they rescued over 10,000 victims in sex trafficking. 10,000. Now, how many of you would know if you see a girl and you suspect that she's trafficked? Nobody can tell. Almost nobody can tell this. So if they rescued 10,000, how many are unseen or unaware? How many million, potentially? And that's just in this country. Some of the other side effects, just physical side effects of the pornography and the way that it disturbs the brain. Depression, anxiety, decreased self-confidence, reduced IQ, ADHD, which is a general inability to focus. Now, in a moment on that, what happens is the average time spent on a scene is 18 seconds. So we'll look at an image. Oh, that's not quite it. I'll go to the next one. That's not doing it for me. I'll go to the next one. You're training the brain to not focus, not stay with something. Next. You're creating an ADHD situation. In the last 15 years, about the time the iPhone was introduced, ADHD diagnoses have increased by 50%. Odd correlation there, don't you think? Erectile dysfunction is another one. With the engagement in pornography and the physical stimulation and so forth of it, retrains the brain what it wants for pleasure. Then when a man gets with a woman, it doesn't stay. He can't maintain or keep the erection if he can get it at all. There are a lot of medical reasons that come up with people, obesity, diabetes, other medical things. But in this arena, this is happening. Have you ever noticed all the radio commercials for men's health that have just suddenly come up in the last 5-10 years? Why are they needed? Again, supply and demand. It's not one, there's half a dozen of them, at least, that are all advertising for this because there's a need for it. In 1950, the average age for a diagnosed erectile dysfunction was 62. In 2018, it's 36. I don't know what it is today, but I guarantee you that number is not accurate because it's missing the younger end, that you're pushing it down, how many 14, 15-year-olds are going to go to their mom and say, oh, I tried to have sex with my girlfriend last night and I couldn't keep it up? No, they're not going to. So that entire culture is not in this study. It's missing. So that number has to be even lower. It's also one of the growing causes of divorce in young married couples in their 20s. Couples get married and soon after they get divorced because they can't keep relations going. One of the other situations which can be noticeable if you're looking at kids, grandkids, even wives looking at husbands to a certain extent, is a reduced pleasure in day-to-day activities or experiences. This surrounds the dopamine. Things when we enjoy just being with family, hanging out. We once enjoyed that. That stimulated the dopamine levels, raised the dopamine levels. When the receptors are shut down, we're not interested anymore. We don't care. We'd rather be recluse and be by ourselves. We see that happen a lot with teens. They'll be fine, they'll be with everybody, they'll want to go out with the family, and then pretty soon they want to stay in the room. They don't want to engage, they don't want to go out with friends, they don't want to do anything. There's a lot of reasons for that, but this could be one of them. So as you can see, this is a huge problem, just in general. A lot more than just the not procreating or having issues with relations, with our wives and so forth, and being a sin. The culture of this is eating us from the inside out, like a cancer. Our heart and soul are designed by God for love. This culture of disordered sexuality, of false gender ideology, of pornography, homosexuality, sexual promiscuity, all the sexual dysfunctions are all from the inside out. It's at a soul level. It's not just a behavior that's learned and then we just go on with it. It's a deep craving in our soul. In essence, it is killing the love that God has designed for us. One of the stories that I tell is very early in my recovery. I was listening to a audio CD by Christopher West. Many of you know him. If you don't know, look him up. He does theology of the body stuff. Great speaker and whatnot. He had this audio, this talk on winning the battle for sexual purity. About 5 minutes into it, he gives a quote from G.K. Chesterton. This was the first thing I did in my recovery. It was listening to his CD. This quote was, "Every man who stands at the doorstep of a brothel is looking for God." I had to pause the CD. I was crying so hard. It's the truth of what it is. This is the root of it, and we don't even know it. We just blame it on some behavior and some craving. The important part to know about this, and this is what I see so often, people say, I've been trying for years. I've been white knuckling. I've been trying harder. I got to try harder. I got to pray more. This cannot be stopped by willpower. It cannot be stopped by merely filtering out poor entertainment or putting filters on electronic devices. Those are all necessary tools, but many parents I'll talk to say, well, we put filters on my son's device, on his iPhone, so we think we're good. That's about 10% of the answer, okay? That it needs to be there, but it doesn't solve anything. In much the same way as you see an alcoholic. Take his bottle away. He's still an alcoholic, he just isn't getting drunk. It didn't solve the problem. It's exactly the same. So what do we do? How do we fix this? You have any ideas? Any thoughts out there?
Well, it involves, strengthening faith.
Okay, that's an important part.
If you're seeking God,
Right.
understanding that that's what it's about and moving in that direction.
Okay,
A support group,
okay. And how do the support groups help?
we get to have conversations, and somebody
Okay, support groups, so you can have conversations and people can listen to you.
Some peer
Vote for Republicans.
What was that?
Vote for Republicans.
Okay. What else?
Conservative.
Or not so liberal.
Yeah, be very conservative, yeah. Well, that's needed to happen, yes. This is the part of the solution that I say is twofold. Part of it is, of course, education. Educate our families and society. Act of Freedom Ministry that Monica's part of is doing this. Road to Purity, we do this. Social media. Road to Purity offers materials to priests at parishes. Use priest materials in confessions. We educate priests on how to deal with this in the pulpit and in the confessional. Educate parents, having knowledge on all the facts. The things I just covered in the last few minutes. Parents need to know this. Grandparents need to know this to know what the real problem is. That doesn't solve it, but knowledge is the beginning of it. Increase or make more prominent the laws on trafficking and the perpetrators. More assistance for victims on that end of things. More education and ministries that help victims get out of this life. Girls are in this, they don't know where to go. They can't get out. Educate people how to be aware of trafficking situations when they may see them. Make that 10,000 traffic victims rescued by the Polaris Project. Let's make it 20,000, 50,000. They're there. They just got to be told, be called out. But in reality, this is the short term, okay? This is the short term of what needs to happen with this. For a long-term solution, we can't just tell people to behave differently. We can't just increase our laws or prevent access and add filters to devices and things like that. That's a good short term. It's a good way to get started, but it doesn't solve the problem, like I said. It's about more than stopping the behavior. It's stopping the desire for the behavior. This is where Road to Purity specializes. Porn at its root is a spiritual disorder. It's a disordered desire, and this disordered desire fuels everything. When we live in our brokenness, we live out this disordered desire. And I mentioned brokenness. Let's talk about brokenness for a moment. God created us to love and be loved. Period. That's who we are. That's what we're made for. That's what we're wired for. But when we grow up, we get wounded somehow. Every last 100% of us do. You don't get out of it. We get wounded through somehow. Either major trauma, things like abuse, divorce, abandonment, a number of things, or minor trauma. Anything from an older sibling making fun of us. A parent saying something like, "Don't be such a wimp." My mom used to call me a panty waste. Okay, certain things. Maybe both parents working all the time, not being around. Feeling alone or abandoned. Simple things like, I tell guys often, a 12-year-old comes home with a report card. She's got 4 A's and 1 C. Dad goes, "Why isn't this C an A?" He doesn't get mad. He doesn't punish him. He just asks the question. When that's all there is to the conversation, the 12-year-old's going to go, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I need to be perfect to be loved." That's just one little instance. Those kinds of things happen hundreds of times in our childhood from parents, siblings, peers, teachers, other people of authority. We hear it all the time, and we begin to adopt this self-identity that is less than, that's false. We hear things like, everybody's heard of this a long time ago, children are meant to be seen and not heard. Okay, how is that hurtful? Well, it's kind of like telling your kid, what you have to say is not important. We don't want to hear it. That's not what you said, but it's what they heard. And that's what affects to this. So quite often, these people of influence, whether it's parents, pastors, whoever, simply not knowing how to affirm properly their children and regularly or appropriately, because it's not modeled to them. It wasn't modeled to them in their growing up, so they don't know how to put it back out. So it's a generational. We've all heard of generational sin, right? I'm doing what my parents did. Well, and how did that work? What is it Dr. Phil says? Is that working for you? So it's stopping that generational part. It's not their fault. It's just what happens because they didn't know. But we need to know, and we're trying to teach that. This absence of perfect love that God designed us for is something that we're designed for. So we're seeking perfect love from imperfect beings. And it's not going to happen. When we don't have this perfect love that we are designed for, we have pain. Many of us aren't even aware of it. We just live with it. We have this pain interiorly. The fact of the matter is, if we don't transform this pain, we will transmit it. It's not a choice. It's not I'm just going to try harder. I'm not going to behave this. No, this is a fact of what happens. We must find this pain and transform it. This pain is basically the beliefs about ourselves from what I was talking about, these events that happen in our lives. We all have these ideas. I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted, I'm not known, I need to be perfect to be loved. There's dozens of them. We go through them in our program under shame. We all have these to some extent, some more than others. Some of them are just stand out like it defines our life. When we get into that situation, there is a door opening for diabolic activity as well. It begins to get influenced into this situation. We begin to adopt these feelings and self-identity of how we live. It affects our behaviors. Many times it's addictions, like pornography, alcohol, video games, shopping, eating, whatever. A lot of times it's behaviors such as success, power, control, looking for money. I have to have the newest electronic device. It represents my identity. I have this car. This car is me. You ever see people that they have the newest car and suddenly they're on top of the world? Suddenly they are worth something because they've got this really nice car. It's who they are. That's part of what drives all of this. 100% of us have this to some degree. Whether we're addicted to pornography or not, it's part of our root and it needs to be changed. One of the things that I see that we think, these highly successful people, they've grown beyond this. Nope. I remember, and I still say today, it's a Holy Spirit thing because I was nowhere in any of this 40 years ago probably. On the Oprah Winfrey Show, of all places, she had a guest who was the president of Pepsi-Cola. President of one of the largest corporations on the planet. She asks him, "What is your greatest fear?" He said that people would find out that I really don't know what I'm doing. He's the president of one of the largest corporations on the planet, and he doesn't believe he knows what he's doing. He has this self-identity of incompetence. Still has it at that level. Still doesn't know what he's doing. Unless we fix this and heal it, it drives us. Who's to say if he's the president of Pepsi-Cola merely because he drove himself through his career to be at that level thinking, if I can just do that, it'd be good enough. I used to have an international software company. I'd set a goal of what sales needed to be. If I could achieve this, then I'd be there. I'd blow the goal away. I said, I set the bar too low. It wasn't about that. It was about what's inside. Like I said, it's the soul level. So this false identity that we have translates into our disordered desires. This disordered desire fuels everything, and the thing is, it's all a lie. 100% of it is a lie. We're all living a lie. Using this fact, we learn that porn is not about porn. It's about something deeper. It's about something that lies to fulfill what we're actually seeking. Standing at the doorstep of a brothel, looking for God. How does that connect, from any logical person? Or from a person who's been there, literally? Hit me so deep I couldn't stop crying.
How does it connect?
We are looking for love. What I had said earlier, that God creates to love and be loved, we are looking for love. We are desperately looking and desiring for this love. When you're going to a brothel or you're looking at pornography, you're trying to fulfill this emptiness, this part within us that's feeling unloved, unwanted, not good enough, and trying to use it as an escape or a coping mechanism like a drug. You're looking for this love, even if you got to pay for it. Even if it's artificial, it's still some resemblance of it because you're so desperate for it. That's where we are. Now, one of the exercises I use with a lot of guys, and this will work for women too, and you can adopt this for other behaviors that you find very addictive or very much kind of control who you are. I call it a lust exercise. So I run into numerous guys, clients, consultations I talk to. A guy will say, I haven't looked at pornography or masturbated in 5 years, but I just can't get past this lust thing. Or I have guys who say, well, yeah, the other stuff's not a problem. Lust is just part of who we are. You can't stop it. And I say, no. Let's use that as a tool to find something. And I'll talk with the guy. And anybody here that, the women are thinking, if it's something, even romance novels, things like that, the women more often get into. But thinking the same way, you have an experience where there's a situation, a certain girl dressed a certain way, behaving a certain way, a certain situation, whatever, that you may be lusting after. You may have these thoughts, and you go, no, I can't think about her. No, custody of the eyes, custody of the mind. I got to stop doing this. No, I'd look away. Oh, just forget about it. That's what we do because we know I shouldn't be doing this. It's not respectful for my wife, so I got to stop. So stop for a moment. Put yourself in that situation without being any graphic thoughts. Just sit there for a moment and say, imagine that person again, and say, if I could have her. I know I can't. I know it's wrong, but if I could, what would that mean to me? And you stop and think about it and say, that would mean I'm loved, I'm worthy, I'm be good enough, I'm wanted. Numerous things. You can even go before the Blessed Sacrament and say, Jesus, in this situation, what does this woman represent to me if I could have her? Knowing that I can't, but if I could, what would that mean? Reveal to me, in my heart, what would this mean? Make a list. So now, you can't have her. It's not right, it's not appropriate, it's just not the right thing to do. I can't have her. So that means I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted. All these things that she was going to give you. So I'm not these things now. Now, you say, why not? Why am I not worthy, not good enough, not whatever it is you come up with? When was the first time that you remember feeling like that? Who told you this? What event or events created this thought or belief? Use those to backtrack and figure out what the roots are underneath this situation, underneath these feelings. And again, you can do this whether it's lust or any other thing that you have to have, that you feel you're addicted to, okay? If I'm getting drunk, I'm masking a feeling. I'm coping with, what am I coping with? Because I don't feel good enough. I just got, I almost got fired today. Well, I'm incompetent, I'm unworthy. All this is coming through the same thing. Now, if you can go back And when we go there, we need to go through and heal these wounds. This is through faith, forgiveness, guidance. The big part of this is forgiveness. The faith helps with the forgiveness, and the guidance can help with the forgiveness. The goal is, like I said, the forgiveness of those individuals that created this when you find who they are. And we'll go to that in a minute. But just, we'll take this other example to the finish. Say you get to the point to where you've forgiven everybody. You no longer have these feelings of unworthiness and so forth. You don't have this, rejection of your father telling you that you would never amount to anything or whatever it is. But you're in a place to where the love of Jesus Christ is so incredibly strong, it overflows within you. It permeates beyond you. You have to spill it out to others because you can't contain it. You feel his presence within you. It is that strong. It owns you. Now, these ideas of these women or whatever, they're like a grain of sand on the beach 10 miles away. What you feel is so overpowering and so strong. Now go back to that thought. You see that woman? Do you want her? Every guy I run through this with, he says, no, of course not. They don't want her now. They don't need her. They have this overwhelming fulfillment and love of Christ with them, and God is flowing through them. The Holy Spirit is flowing through them. What we need to know is this second part, how we feel with that, the experience of God coming into us. That is the truth. If you don't experience it, you don't feel it, you're denying it. You're living the lie. The belief that, I got to heal this first. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. So that doesn't true. I don't feel him. He doesn't love me. No. That experience of feeling him so overwhelming that none of these other things matter is the absolute truth. Period. For 100% of us. We don't need these other things. Just don't need them. When you see whatever the situation is, in this example, you see the woman that typically may trigger you. You might notice that person, but it's like, it's no different than the other old guy standing here over here. They're just a person. There's nothing there beyond that. There just isn't an interest because you don't need it. How we get there is the healing of what's underneath. It's looking to all of these issues, like I say, we have, the biggest part of it is forgiveness. We all have some level of unforgiveness of something, of someone. Maybe major trauma. Maybe, our father beat us. Maybe our mother abandoned the family. Whatever it is. Maybe an uncle sexually molested us. Or maybe just didn't get the love we deserved or should have had. But all of these individuals we hold something against. Forgiveness is the major, probably the biggest tool in releasing these ties to the wounds and the false beliefs of who we are. What many of us don't realize, I think we know it, but we never put two and two together. We pray it every Sunday in Our Father. Unforgiveness is a sin. Forgive us as we forgive our trespasses, or forgive those who trespass against us. How would we forgive to other people? Are we not forgiving certain individuals for certain things? That's a sin. It's not only a sin, it's a mortal sin. So how can we expect to be forgiven? We ask it every Mass we go to. We pray for it and ask, tell God, forgive me as I've forgiven other people. And he stands there and says, well, you haven't forgiven him and him and him. We need to go through that. When we forgive all these other individuals, no matter, make a list. Make a list of everybody right down to the kid who didn't choose you to be on his dodgeball team in 2nd grade. Everybody. And you have to go through the forgiveness with all of them. Okay? When that is complete and done, many of it will be released. You'll feel a weight lifted. You go to confession, you can say what you did. You'll notice a tremendous difference of what you've had. Now, there'll be certain ones, major trauma things, a father that treated you bad for 20 years of your life. That's going to take some getting. It may take, several times to be doing that and so forth. But the understanding of it is what is happening to you. And one of the ways to get through this is I hear a lot of guys will talk about, oh, my dad did this, or my uncle did this, and I can never forgive him. Well, okay. Let's look at his family. Take your father, for example. He was, abusive, yelling, alcoholic. Well, have you met your grandfather? Yeah, he was the same way. Okay. We just talked about generational stuff, right? Same thing. Your father is the way he is because his father was that way. So now maybe instead of having hate or disdain or whatever it is for your father because the way he treated you, you just hate him for what he did to you. Now because you know how he was treated and how it feels, you move to pity. You move from pity to compassion, and from compassion to forgiveness. Understanding somebody else's story helps you more able to forgive them in this whole process. One of the things that parents, even grandparents, need to be aware of, in the example I gave, like with the report card, the kid with the 12-year-old report card, the dad says, oh yeah, what's wrong? Why isn't there CNA? Inherently, there's nothing wrong with that. He just asked a question, right? Another adult might just answer the question. But a child who's starving to be accepted and loved is, oh, I'm not good enough. Unless the father says, oh, great job on these 4 A's. I really like where you're going with this. This is a phenomenal job. I'm happy to see this. This C, is there something you can need help with? Can we help you with this? Are you struggling with something here? I want to make sure that you can do things the way you want to do them. Now, why isn't this here? It's not a major change. It's offering the affirmation and acceptance and love with the other conversation. It's not don't criticize, don't talk in the critical ways and things like that. To get it full information. Make sure that they are affirmed and positive with it. So they know that they are loved and worthy and accepted and you did a good job. You're worthy, you did good. All of these things need to be conveyed to them. And for some, that's not who you are. That's not the way you've been doing it. And you got a 14-year-old and you suddenly start talking that way to them, they're going to say, what are you on? So maybe share with them why you're doing it, maybe have a conversation or break into it, whatever. Something needs to change. Imagine the fact you're growing up. Anybody here, can think of their mother who was, however she was, that hurt you. What if she didn't get wounded and she didn't act that way? What if she didn't tell you were a wimp? If that never happened, how would that have changed you? We look back and see the generational triggers. It's the same thing. Your boss may act a certain way. Say, he just acts like my dad. I hate that. If your dad didn't have such a power over you and how much you dislike what he did and how much it hurt, if all that was forgiven and changed, your boss wouldn't have that kind of power over you. You'd recognize that, oh, that's not really appropriate behavior, but it wouldn't get you. It can change everything in how we behave and how we live. Then this love of Christ comes through us in a different way. When we heal all this and we live like this, and we don't need these things, we don't need pornography, we don't need all these other addictions, all these other behaviors, we suddenly begin to change who we are. suddenly pornography is reduced not because we're strong-arming it, we're restricting it off the internet, we're doing this and that. It's changing because nobody wants it. It doesn't serve a purpose anymore. And sex trafficking disappears with it. We have our Restoring God's Foundation program that we use. It's been out for several years. We use it with seminarians. We use it with people all over the world, independent studies, all kinds of things. I can't even count how many times men have come to me saying, I started this program to get control of my porn habit. I've been doing this for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever. This program has changed who I am. And the porn's just gone away on its own. That's the goal. We need to change who we are. This identity that we have, that we're not worthy, that we're not good enough. Now, whatever it is, I mean, there's a million of them, but whatever it is that drives you to be who you are, fix it. It's a lie. Okay? I often will tell guys, if it's some guy named Jim that I'm talking to that tells me all this stuff, I said, Jim, you're living as if you're Fred. Fred's the one that is not worthy. You're living like, why are you living like Fred? That's not true. Don't live like him. Live like you. This is not your identity. You are worthy. You are good enough. You are loved. You are wanted. God knew, scripturally it's proven, God knew every sin you were going to create in your whole life, every time you were going to reject him. He knew this before you were born. He created you anyway. He wants you anyway. How do you say no to that? And that's just learning the truth. Even though they have the old saying, the truth will set you free. Well, this is the truth. How do you live without that? It's changing our impact. Will change our world. Will change our culture. And that's the long-term way to get a hold of all of these issues that we're talking about. The short-term way is critical and important to take action now. It's in the name of the ministry that she has. Take action now. We need to take action now. Part of that action is action within ourselves, in our culture, in our community, and who we are. Now, I have one final story that I'm going to share about a little more about why I do this and why I share some of the stuff that I've done. But before I do that, and then I can take questions, I just want to let you know that we have a material table there. A lot of you have seen it already. We have some stuff that's free for you. There's a sexuality resource guide. On the right side of the table, it has these things over there. I have these Novena to End Human Sex Trafficking. The cards that's over there, those are free for you. There's a couple of other little things over there also. And as an organization, we have to survive, so we have stuff to sell too. Part of it is our Restoring God's Foundation program, the book. Now, this is dressed around sexuality, but you can read through or kind of substitute the sexuality for whatever you have. The core of the healing and learning and understanding the wounds underneath, that's the important part. That's what this teaches. The pornography and sexuality is in here because that's who we address it to. But what's learned is the same thing, so that's valuable that way too. From one addict to another, my first book, that's my whole story. Actually, it's my whole story up to about 8 years ago when it was released. If you go to our website and our podcast, there's a couple stories there, or a couple of recordings there that have a whole testimony. We have something really special too that is, it's a purity rosary that was invented or created for us. They're handmade in Italy. There's a white one and a black one. The center piece is St. Michael with a sword slaying a serpent on a laptop computer. One of the intentions for this rosary in the book that comes with it is a whole scriptural rosary. One of the intentions is to pray for the victims of sex trafficking. So that goes along with what we're here for today too. and I'll tell you this last story, then I'll take some questions. One of the reasons that I do this is something that happened to me probably 6 years ago. Road to Purity has already existed. I was figuring, I felt called to do it. It was doing materials and releasing things and helping people and so forth, but I wasn't really focused. Then I had one morning I had this dream. I don't call it a dream exactly, but 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning kind of thing. I just sort of woke up, wasn't awake, wasn't asleep. It's kind of one of those in-between states. Laying there with my eyes closed, and suddenly I see myself standing at the edge of a canyon, infinitely bigger than the Grand Canyon. You can't see the edges. They're so big. Down in it was packed with virtually all of humanity. Everybody's down there. And they were all engulfed in some type of sexual sin. It was like a green cloud, just mist flowing between them. They were packed in like sardines. They couldn't move. There was this overwhelming sense of abandonment, loss, and aloneness. It was profound. It was just overwhelming. I'm standing at the edge of this canyon, looking down there. I'm sensing this because I used to be down there. Then Jesus is standing at my side. I just noticed he's standing at my right side. He puts his left hand on my shoulder. And he motions, he says, "You know it doesn't have to be like this. I need you to tell them for me." Then it just went away. I was awake then. I got up in the bathroom and I cried for an hour. What do I do with this? But that's been the focus ever since. Everything we do, every program we teach, every product we create, every mission element that we come, am I telling them? That's what I ask. Am I telling them? That keeps the ministry focused on what we're supposed to do. We have a podcast that my son supports everything we do. He's around 30. He hosts the podcast, and we talk every week on it. The podcast on our website is called Tell Them For Me. So that's pretty much what I have, and I want to know what questions you have. So.
Any question?
Did I answer? Yeah, go ahead.
Observation. I'm thinking of St. Augustine who said, our hearts are restless till they rest with him.
True.
And 2, since we're in the Eucharistic revival, we have to develop a prayer life that is so strong. And part of that is the sacramental life in the Catholic Church. And since this is the 3-year revival of the Eucharist, the more we develop our love for the Eucharist, to talk about Christ in our life, the manifestation that you said, when you look at these things, if you have Christ that deep, it's going to be irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. When we allow ourselves to receive him and his truth and go away from the lies that we live, then we can receive him, and then that's the truth. And that's what we live. Yeah. Anything else?
I have to ask a question.
Yep.
You said that earlier in your conversation with us that when you went to a brothel, you knew you were going to go to hell.
Right. I visited a prostitute. It wasn't a brothel, but yeah.
If you didn't get back and go to confession.
Yep.
I guess I'm having a hard time. What was your thought process? If you went to confession, were you good for until the next incident?
I didn't think about it that way. I just knew at the moment, it's like you got tunnel vision. It's like, I have to do this. The need was so overwhelming that it just pushed everything else away. Nothing else mattered. I had to have this. The need for this love and attention, fake love, whatever it was so overwhelming that I had to do it. That's the illustration of how far this addiction can go. And because I'm not alone, that's why there's 9,000 illicit massage parlors and 1 million prostitutes. Because it's not just me. You know, it's a common thing. All guys will say, "Oh, I'm the only one. Nobody understands me." Well, okay, you're the only one. That's why you support a multi-billion or multi-trillion-dollar industry by yourself. And you're doing it with all the free porn you're looking at. No, it's not just you. Yeah.
For people that want to help someone who they see in the grip of this,
Mhm.
what do you suggest as those first steps? I mean, you talked about this restoring God's foundation. Is that something you would suggest to start with? I mean,
Yes.
a lot of times it's counseling. I don't know where you find it.
Counseling, it's very tricky to find the right counselor. A good Catholic counselor, not a secular counselor. And it's very important in my eyes to go through a counselor that has been through it, who understands literally. I had a counselor who was instrumental in my recovery because he had been there. He knew exactly what I was feeling and what I was going through. Knew how to get to the other side. Very unique. I don't know that I've run across another counselor that is that special that way. It's the things that I do with a guy. Our website, roadtopurity.com, you can get to we have the books here are printed books to use. This whole program is free online in a course, an independent study course for free. A lot of people want a book. A lot want a printed book. They want to go through and read it and whatever, the tangible. That's why we do the printed book. And then we have a workbook too, a separate book that's done that. That's available online as well. But it's there. It leads you, start from chapter 1 is motivation and desire. What am I really looking for? Is this an external motivation or an internal motivation? Meaning, did I get caught by somebody? So I need to change because, my wife's telling me fix it or get out. That's an external motivation. They don't last. Or I'm tired of who I am in my very existence and how I'm disappointing God. I can't do that. I've got to change. That's an internal motivation. You discover that and teach you how to go from external to internal if that's where you're at. And it goes through the whole, talk about boundaries and exit strategies and brings in the sacraments, and we bring our Blessed Mother into it. What is her role in this whole thing? Change your identity and who you are, how to forgive those that hurt you, and how to figure out who those people are. Takes you through the whole thing. It's 35 weeks program. It's designed.
Your website, and so that's all, I didn't see if that's outlined on the website, but it is what you suggest as a method for starting is on there.
Yeah. I mean, just to start the program. I mean, you can start the one online. It's free. So. Any other questions?
I really like the program. As you're saying, change who you are.
Mhm.
And I have to say that maybe you could decide to change who you are, because you have to decide to make the change first.
True. Yeah, you have to, and that's part of this whole thing. And that's part of the motivation that we talk about in the beginning of the program. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this because of an external motivation, or am I doing this because I've decided I need to do this? And it is a decision, yeah, because I run into more people who say, it's too much work, I'm not going to do this, or I don't need to do this, than ones that say, I'm done, I got to fix it. They haven't decided. Usually it takes some type of major event to push them over the edge, unfortunately. Hitting bottom of some type. But anything else?
Well, let's
Okay.
all thank Dan. What a great